AxiomSL, okay, from a family perspective, I would say Alex is the father, all right? And Vlad...
Don't please don't say that.
Indeed, he is. He's the brain who can deliver all of the functionalities that is needed, in order to meet these requirements.
So Vlad is a carrot.
First of all, you asked for it, and we did support for XLSX files, which actually we had to do a long time ago. We finally did it. We integrated into our system two more business process management systems, and again, that's something which we are quite proud of. And we did several pilots already with different BPMs, and they were quite successful. For Basel calculations, we improved them. One of the major items, we added streams for computation module or computation support. I promised Bill not to talk about dashboards, but I will still talk about them. We're advancing our dashboard functionality, and we were able actually to implement pretty much the whole tactical solution for form PFs using dashboards. So only when you need to drill down, you see our main GUI, which is like a report writer. Other than that, the whole functionality from loading of the data, validation of the data, like viewing all of the statuses, all of the validation, all the creation status, sign-off, submission, everything can be done via dashboard. And most of the time, for pretty much the last 6 or 7 months, we spent on XBRL development. And I will be concentrating mostly on XBRL today. Just one example of the dashboard that you develop, which is relevant to you. We've created this sample for FFIC 031, and you can see that this dashboard actually takes information from the whole system, from the report, and it will summarize information about all of the schedules in one place. So you can see all of the issues, you can see variance reports on the same screen, you can see failed data checks, and from that dashboard you can drill down into the system. And it will bring you precisely to the point where the issue happened or where you see significant variance. XBRL. Ken Lemar mentioned today that XBRL is coming to US, and actually it is in the US, and it's been used in SEC reporting, and it is used somewhat in FFAC 03141, but it's not real XBRL. So what you see happening in Europe and Asia is much more complex than we see in US. Let's say the banks and the regulator. It's XML based, and that actually brings one major problem. For business people, it looks scary. For technical people, it looks too simple. So they look like XBRL and say, nah, that's not XML. So for business people, there's nothing to be afraid of. I personally consider myself an expert. I read a book called XBRL for Dummies. So that's usually sufficient. And but for business people, for IT, I just want to mention that actually, unfortunately, it's not as simple as it looks. And what we try to do, and we try to kind of simplify the whole process on this diagram. XBRL comes as a taxonomy, which is a set of literally dozens of files. Those files can contain definition of your business reporting. It represents validations, if any. It represents presentation sometimes. It represents calculations, relationship between different reporting items, etc., etc. It's all in those several dozens files. So what we try to do, we try to load everything in Axiom, transform it into Axiom objects, which are very similar to what you do right now, which lets you actually work with familiar environment, and then output XBRL, which would be transmitted later on. So that's our business project. The complexity which has come in lately, and that's one of the items which, one of the things which we see in Europe, in Australia, and in Indonesia, and it's happening in the US as well. XBRL is becoming multidimensional. So what it means, if you look at the FFAC 031, it's flat. So every item, every reporting point is presented as just one point, one definition. In Europe and XBRL, every point is presented as the value associated with multiple dimensions. So the same value associated with multiple characteristics like, let's say, country, currency, business line, asset type, you name it. So it has multiple definitions, and every point actually within the same report can have different set of dimensions. And XBRL actually allows you to actually look at this information and present this information later on when you submit it. So briefly, on this diagram, you can see that every point is presented by, let's say, 3 different dimensions. Usually it's several dimension, one measure, and as I said, on the same report, you can see absolutely different combination of dimensions. And the advantage of having, actually, dimensions are kind of one of the smallest denominations of the report. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But the advantage of having a dimension is that once mapped, you can use it everywhere else. So if you have multiple reports that are using the same dimension, you just map it to a data once and just use dimension as it is. And dimensions can also be hierarchical. That's what we see a lot in Europe. So for that, we've created quite a few new objects which you haven't seen before. We slightly changed the appearance of of our main screen, and that's just one of the screens which we changed. And this is the result of the import of correct taxonomy. What happens? So when you press the import button, system takes all of the files and convert them into pretty much 3 different types of objects immediately. So it creates dimensions. And again, dimension is, for example, list of asset types. That would be one dimension. That's homogeneous data. It could be list of countries. Dimensions could be fixed and variable. So variable dimension is your list of QSIPs, for example. That would be one of the dimensions. So we create dimension. It's an object. We create measures. Measures would be your amount. And we create reports. Reports are also defined by the taxonomy. So that would be one of the final results, and that's pretty much what you see at the end. When you're done with importing, actually, up to this point, everything is happening automatically. You don't have to do anything, just press import button. You have to map your dimensions to your data. And here you perform pretty much the same task as you usually do with Axiom. So instead of having a bunch of shorthands, you have one big dimension, which you can look at as one huge shorthands with all of the items in one object. So you can, instead of having multiple shorthands, you have one big shorthand, which is the relative dimension, which is homogeneous data. In this case, we have counterparty sectors. So it's a list of counterparty sectors. Each one of them has to be mapped to your data. Again, similar to what you do right now to every model. What happens after that? So after you're done with mapping, the data has to be processed, right? So what you do right now, you create portfolio segregations, and after processing, portfolio segregation gets populated. Again, right now it all happens automatically. The system will generate objects which are similar to portfolios and aggregations without your involvement. It all happens behind this scene, and the system will actually automatically populate all that those portfolio segregations, which we call right now hypercubes, well, because they're multidimensional and they contain all the information not aggregated and aggregated at the same time. So right now you see this setup for one of the hypercubes. Again, I'm not going into all the details, but again, the idea is every hypercube will contain all the dimensions which are relevant to the specific point of the report. This is your new report writer. So the new report writer, again, it's driven by XBRL. If, for example, taxonomy has presentation layer, it will be generated automatically. If it's not, actually, you'll have to create yourself. But the process is very simple. So you don't have to create every point of the report any longer. So you'll operate based on the dimensions. So you take the whole dimension, list of asset types, for example, place it on the report, and they will automatically appear, let's say, horizontally. You can do the same vertically, and you can have multiple dimensions actually within the same report. So in other words, right now, FFAC is pretty much one-dimensional, sometimes two-dimensional. You can have 5, 6, 7, 10 dimensions on the same report. All the dimensions will be predefined, imported automatically from XBRL taxonomy. So this report will pretty much be done within minutes rather than hours or days. So what it actually, well, for us, it pretty much it gives us pleasure of programming all that. What it gives you, the way we try to do it is, I mean, XBRL is a great thing, and again, you have to report all that. But what we also wanted you to be able to do is to use the same technology, because we believe that we took advantage of this new initiative to actually advance our technology. So right now, you can, even without XBRL or without XBRL defined reports, you can take any of your reports. Pretty much, we'll look at multiple reports, any call reports, FRY 11, whatever, any report. And you can actually create a report based on the same technology as XBRL. So you just don't import XBRL because you don't have it, but you create dimensions. System can allow you to create dimensions. You can map them. You can execute them. It will create all of the objects automatically, so you don't have to create portfolios and aggregations. And the report is going to be, it will not look as nicely as it does right now, but it will be able to present everything, and it should generate output or XBRL, in case of FIC 031, automatically for you. All of the validations are going to be done automatically because there is XBRL for that. All of the calculations are going to be done automatically. So everything will be done because, I mean, it's already available. Questions?
I'm sure there's a lot of other solutions out there because of XBRL coming into the market. How do we compare our solution to the other solutions?
Such a coincidence. I'm glad you asked. All right. So I came up with an analogy. Actually, how we are different from other XBRL solutions. So let's say you have a task of getting animals, like every animal has to become a pair, a couple, and they have to be all actually placed on the same boat, right? So we have no with this task. So actually, that's the result. That's what we have to accomplish at the end, right? So we have to actually find all of the animals. We have to actually count them. We have to identify them, right? And then place them in certain places. So what our competition does? So they have a bunch of, let's say, business analysts, right? Running around the jungle. It's a data jungle. They actually identify all of the data elements or all of the animals. They actually bring them to the zoo, right? So they accomplish this task. Then after everything is behind in this cage, they have to be identified and labeled, right? So after it's all done, usually what happens, people realize that actually you don't have the right count, you don't have right animals, you're missing some of them, you have too many of others. So again, probably iterative process. At the end, you have all the proper animals in proper place. So you're done with this one. In case of Axiom, actually, you don't do that. So in case of our XBRL solution, actually, you have all the animals in your data jungle. You label them immediately. You do our mapping. So you identify them and map. And the next step is, voila, they're all here. So again, let me simplify it a bit, but yeah, but the idea is pretty much that's the analogy. And again, if you try to think about the multidimensional taxonomy, that's perfect example. So in this case, you have two dimensions. You have gender, which is one dimension, right? You have to have like every animal of both genders, and you have kind of the type of the animal. So you have multidimensional view. And so, yeah, that's what it is. More questions.
I was just wondering, when you were talking about moving over to the XBRL, how you have those kind of like master shorthands that you would write over in the XBRL, or how does that get incorporated?
Again, whatever worked before will keep working. So what you can do, I mean, if you want to, let's say if you decide, in case of XBRL 31, for example, you can create, if you want to use this technology, you will have to create one big dimension, which would be your MDRM. You will have 2.5 or whatever thousand items in your dimension. And you can use shorthands within each one of them, because definitions are exactly the same as they are right now. So you can just reuse them. So you just place the shorthand within definition for every item. So that can be done this way, or actually, if you have enough time or interns, you can actually copy-paste condition, because we actually also improve the way we map condition to the model groups. So again, it's done slightly differently and more efficiently. But again, the old way also works. I have just one small announcement about. We, as you know, we was trying to improve our security. So from new release, we're gonna have new rules for the passwords. So from now on, your password should contain numbers, letters, punctuation marks, development, plot, punchline, and expected ending. So, right. Thank you.
Now you can understand why we're having so much fun at the office. Between the zoo, the boat, the submarine, I mean, listen, it's now time for cocktail. But before we go to the cocktail, I'd like again to say thank you to Jim and all of your team, and obviously Morgan Stanley Total for welcoming us in this beautiful venue. And the cocktail will take place on the 3rd floor. So we will guide you, but it's a beautiful room on the 3rd floor overlooking 5th Avenue. And we're delighted that you were here. Thank you, and we'll see you next year.
All right. Bye.